Hello, everybody. Happy you could stick around. My name is Gary Gomes. I'm a Vedic astrologer of some 34 to 35 years experience, depending on how you count things. Funny, it doesn't seem that long. It seems more like 33 years, but no, it's been that long. And I'd like to talk with you about how Vedic astrology affects your life, how it affects the world in general, or how it reflects the world in general, and also what's going to happen over the upcoming week for both your signs and for the world in particular. Now, um, basically, I'm going to leave this as kind of an open discussion this week. We did have Jupiter change signs this past week, which is a big event. I'll show you that in a few seconds. And when Jupiter changes signs, there's a certain lightness or a certain more directness that comes about in the world. There's also what I would call more of a return to orthodoxy in matters connected with that particular sign. So also, while I still have your attention just for a few minutes, I do offer readings and I do offer astrology classes for those of you so inclined. My prices will be going up slightly in the near future. I'm hoping to avoid it. But if you want to get in a good deal, especially in terms of the lessons, now would be the time to jump on board. So that having been said, that particular plug is has been stated, and the appeal has been made to you. I would also like to say that if you would subscribe, like, share the video, comment if you'd like to communicate with me, or even if you're an astrologer or have a unique perspective on world events, please feel free to propose a collaboration with me. I'd be happy to work with you and share this particular platform with you. If you like me on your particular podcast or broadcast, that's fine with me as well. Just let me know and I'll see if my schedule can fit it in. Okay. So, but I'm pretty easy to get along with. Scheduling can be a little bit hairy, but I'm pretty easy to get along with and pretty agreeable. So, that having been said, let's move on to the communication access. So you can contact me through text or telephone at 508-525-0001. Again, that's 508-525-0001. And you can email me at Gary Gomes, my name, the letter G, after that at gmail.com. So that's Gary Gomes G at gmail.com. You can also find me at several places on the internet. I have a Facebook page. I'm on Instagram. I'm on X. I'm on a variety of other forums. I'm not tough to find. Um, if you try to contact me through Crystal Expectations, you probably can do that as well, although the email connection there is a bit uh, unreliable. So you try to contact me either through my website or through the Crystal Expectations website. It's going to be a little bit of a challenge, I think. Okay, so I'm trying to orient this collar here. Sorry about this. This is ridiculous. All right, so I'm trying to make myself look a little more symmetrical, which is always a challenge for me. All right, all right, so let's look at the chart and see what's happening this week in the stars, or in the planets, actually, more properly. So I'm going to share the screen, and I did one which was A newer one, it doesn't matter because the rising sign doesn't change, but I think this is the more recent one. Okay, so this isn't showing, so I'll get off that right away and start trying to share. All right, so now it's sharing. So, all right, so big events this week. Sun has moved into Taurus. That happened this past week. Jupiter has moved into Gemini. Mars is still in Cancer, wreaking havoc, to use an expression, on the moon today, actually, and wreaking havoc on people with um, planets in Capricorn, Aquarius, and also Libra. Okay, so uh, Vedic astrology aspects are very straightforward. That's one of the reasons I think I like them, because they would, so the closer they are to the planet by degree, the more powerful they are, but they do affect the entire sign. Jupiter just crept into Gemini a couple of days ago. So when I mean crept, you notice it's less than 1 degree of Gemini. So a little bit clearer thinking, a little bit better communication. Um, Jupiter in Taurus indicates a certain amount of stubbornness, but this is better for clearer attainment of goals. So Jupiter in Taurus, very good for certain things, like for staying the course or for sticking with the course. But Jupiter in Gemini, since Gemini is what's called a mutable sign in Western astrology, or a um, Vishaba is the term they use in Vedic astrology, Vishaba. So mutable signs are changeable. They're transitory signs. Um, Action starting signs are cardinal signs or chara signs in Vedic astrology in Sanskrit, and fixed signs are stira signs. Not really stira. I'm sorry, I'm using the right term. But yeah, they're fixed. They're not going to change their basic nature. Our fixed signs, they don't change a heck of a lot. They're um, they're more stubborn. They won't shift. They won't change direction a whole lot. Um, I think one of the things that we've seen in over the past few months is that um, paths have been chosen in the United States, which were essentially pretty stubborn paths. There's been, basically no room for compromise. With Jupiter and Gemini, you're going to see more of that particular dialogue happening over the next few months, over the next year or so. So, um, I was just reading an article about the Supreme Court talking about due process for deportations, and the Supreme Court came back and, in no uncertain terms, said that um, the due process is essentially really the only way to read this is the due process concept does doesn't exempt illegal uh, or undocumented aliens. So they're taking a very literal view of the due process clause in the Constitution. So does that mean that the Trump administration will stop in its efforts to uh, deport aliens? No, they'll try to do something a little more, um, a little less draconian, a little less sudden. Uh, but my guess is they'll try to go for expedited court proceedings as opposed to long, prolonged or prolonged trials. And I'm also guessing that you'll see um, some more flexibility on the Democratic side, mainly because I think there's a realization, not necessarily connected with aliens, but um, the lack of flexibility on the Democratic side isn't really helping them in terms of favorability. So I so I so I'm tending to see this as a period of compromise coming up, as opposed to strict attention to political dogma. And I think that's a good thing. Maybe you'll see some lessening of tensions, probably not until mid-July. And again, mid-July through roughly the end of August is a dangerous period for the president in terms of potential violence or potential health problems, mainly because of Mars and Ketu coming together in Leo, which is his first house. But I also think that this Sagittarius aspected by Jupiter will also open more agreements or more negotiations with people around the world around tariffs and issues connected with trade. Okay, so because Jupiter in Gemini is actually about partnerships. Okay, so if there have been relationship struggles in your life, making it personal for you, if there have been relationship struggles, although there will still be arguments over the next uh, couple of months, mainly because Mars is in Cancer, um, you'll you'll see more a willingness to compromise over the next few months because of this Jupiter transit. The other thing is Venus and Jupiter are no longer in mutual signs. So Venus is still heading towards its exaltation degree, and it'll hit its exaltation degree roughly in about 2 weeks. That's the best possible placement for Venus in a chart. But for some signs, it will cause expenses. For some signs, it will cause additional work. Uh, but it will also create more uh, more spiritual life, more attention to spiritual life. The other big event, which is going to happen later on this month, is the Rahu transit into Aquarius, which is this month early, or I'm, I'm sorry, not May, but June. And Rahu in Pisces has been very difficult for belief systems or for spirituality or for just in general. Okay, it's been difficult for spiritual leaders. Um, the downside of this sun going into Taurus is so the upside of this is more, um, I guess, more solidarity in the arts, more, but I think also a little bit more self-delusion in the arts, if I'm honest. And also, if we get into it, authority figures will be under attack, uh, under more severe attack than they have recently. So for about a month, you'll see authority figures sort of stymied in terms of what they want to do. After about a month's time or 3 weeks' time, the sun will be in the same sign with Jupiter. There will be um, a lot more ability of authority figures to act more directly, communicate more directly, um, and also, like I said, a lot of issues connected with trade will become extremely important. And this will continue for about a year, but it'll be felt most intensely over the summertime. So, and again, especially after mid-June through mid-July. The other thing you want to look at is a lot of the anti-establishment government regime movements that are happening around the world will intensify over the next month or so. I think you'll still see them intensify over the next year or so because mainly because Jupiter and Gemini will not um, prevent people from acting the way that Jupiter and Taurus has. Um, so, so let me see if I can clarify. If Jupiter's in Taurus, a, a sheer act of stubbornness can make an individual win. Okay, so we're seeing a lot of activity, especially in Europe, but also in Brazil and also in Korea, and also in China for that matter. Just ignoring the will of the people. And I think that's detrimental. That's really what causes major uprisings in countries. And that's dangerous for any political establishment. Okay. So I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying based upon history, that's been dangerous. So if you it's interesting in that if you give people a little bit of freedom and then you take it back, they're more likely to rebel than if you do nothing at all. And this is a situation that a lot of these states are in, especially in Europe. And in terms of communication, in terms of dealing with the issues of their people, a lot of governments have not been responsive. A great many governments have not been responsive. Um, and that is going to be increased by Saturn aspecting the sun over the next month or so. Venus exalted, again, like I said, they'll think they're right. The governments will think they're right. Venus is in the ninth house of governance, but they're really suppressive right now. Saturn's in the ninth house in the chart we're looking at right now. Rahu being there, and Rahu moving into Aquarius, it will tend to Aquarius is viewed to be Rahu's or the North Lunar Node's actual sign in Vedic astrology. It's its ruling sign. It's its home. So that's one of the reasons I don't like to use Uranus um, or Pluto because Rahu acts a bit like Uranus and Neptune, and K2 acts a little bit like Pluto and Neptune. So essentially, K2 gets its exaltation and own sign, gets its own sign in Leo, but it gets its exaltation sign in the sign Scorpio. So it acts quite a bit Plutonian. So that's why I hardly ever look at the outer planets in this chart. And even though I have Neptune indicated in Pisces up here, so that's Neptune in its own sign. Um, Venus is, Neptune is, in Western astrology, was considered like a higher octave of Venus or Jupiter, and Rahu has certain Neptunian qualities to it. So it has this ability to addict or cause illusion. Okay. So one of the things I'm always happy about when I see Rahu and Venus together is that some element of the truth always comes out. It's like basically it's like there are these things that have been hidden away for quite a while, and all of a sudden Rahu and Venus come together, or Rahu and Jupiter come together, and it's like, Oh, well, you see, we've been doing this for the past 20 years, but you didn't know about it. And everybody goes, what? And that's essentially the effect of the nodes interacting with benefic planets. And you'll see underhanded activities being revealed more and more uh, as uh, K2 moves towards Jupiter, but that'll take a few years, if I'm honest. So there are no planets near K2 right now except for Mars, and you'll see a you'll see a conjunction of that in after mid-July. And that may expose certain threats of violence or violent activities that are being planned against certain people around the world, not just in the United States. There have been a few news stories about James Comey. Um, there have been a few news stories about there have been efforts to uh, reconsider the election of David Hogg as the Democratic vice chair. There have been a variety of exposures of people who may not have who may not have been entirely truthful with us. Uh, I think I recently saw an expose on Lindy Lee, who claimed to be have inside knowledge on the Democratic Party. She apparently didn't have any more knowledge than anybody else did. But also, you're seeing a lot of journalists coming out and a lot of um, people um, essentially attacking Joe Biden now that he's out of power and out of influence, and also attacking the party uh, because of because it was almost like the Watergate uh, investigation. I'm old enough to remember those, but it was like, what did the president know and when did he know it? That was a perpetual line of questioning in the Watergate trials. And interestingly enough, a lot of people thought this was going to happen with Trump. It may still happen with Trump, but um, but I think so. There's been a lot of brouhaha about the gift of jets, um, the gift of a jet, but essentially that wasn't a personal gift, so it doesn't fall under the emollients clause. So the emollients clause is essentially what I would call a bribery clause, being influenced by other governments. But I'm not a fly on the wall in these negotiations. But if it was a gift to the country versus directly to the president, it's not a violation. So again, the purpose of going over these things is not really to upset one political camp or the other. It's to try to give you a little bit of a balance and see how and get an idea on how these planetary phenomena are shaping our perception, especially Mercury, which is right now it's rubbed up because it's in Aries and it wants to talk and it wants to attack and it wants to um, take matters into its own hands. And um, we don't know the whole story of any of these things that are happening right now, right? So again, it's take a deep breath. You think you know what's happening. You really don't know what's happening because we still have the Venus-Rahu conjunction. Venus is a very truthful planet. I'm going against certain Vedic tenets or certain Vedic astrology tenets that some people hold, but Venus is actually one of the most truthful planets in the chart. And the Venus-Rahu chart, Venus-Rahu Saturn will uncover scandals but the Saturn will make the picture fuzzy. Okay, Saturn makes it seem worse than it really is. And again, there's this antagonistic energy in the air because of Mars being in Cancer. And also, again, one of the things I'm going to say personally is be careful driving, be careful dealing with people, be careful with people's emotions. People are going to be very easily hurt or offended, okay, if you have Mars in Cancer. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And I'm trying to keep that in mind. That's why I'm dancing around a lot of these things. And also it's because I'm not sure about a lot of these things. I'm just giving you my perceptions. I could be wrong about the reality of the situation. Okay, but given the planetary, given my area of expertise is really this. It's the astrology. It's not the politics. Although I have followed politics since I was around 16 years old, but I'm not an expert in it. You know, but if I'm looking at this Jupiter over here, Jupiter's still in a very weak phase in the chart. It won't become really strong for about another 6 months or so when it's towards the middle of the sign. And so Jupiter and Venus have this unusual trait, or not unusual trait. They tend to be strongest between 10 and 20 degrees in a chart. So Jupiter's still really, really weak. But we are seeing some signs, some hopefully optimistic signs of some economic recovery. We're seeing some disappointment or some fear too, obviously. But I think that a lot of that is going to start to go away pretty quickly. Um, which, as Jupiter in Gemini makes us more optimistic, is heading us towards our exaltation sign. The only thing I ever worry about when Jupiter's in its exaltation sign is if it ever gets affected by malefics, and that makes us do stupid wars. That makes the United States do stupid wars. So essentially, that was the Iraqi invasion was when Jupiter was exalted. Okay, so I think one of the things that you have to keep in mind is I'm guardedly optimistic the next couple of years will show a lot of improvement because Jupiter's moving into good signs. Okay, it's moving out of Taurus, which is not a friendly sign for it. It's moving into Gemini, which is still not a friendly sign for it, but it's moving towards its exaltation sign of Cancer, so it's gathering in strength. And Venus will be leaving its exaltation sign, but moving towards Taurus, which is still a good placement within the next couple of months. So this should be overall um, pleasant summer economically. In terms of Mars, Mars is difficult. Mars with K2 is kind of an explosive combination. So we'll have to watch out for fires, for accidents, and that'll be July through roughly July through mid-September. I would be really careful. Okay. But overall, this isn't a bad map. Uh, Mars aspects Moon, a lot more attention on female issues. I'm not seeing either. So again, I think what we're seeing around the world is what I would call a popularist movement against an establishment movement. Whether or not you want to view populists as being um, stupid or and the elites as having your best interests at heart, that's your pick. Um, it's not, you know, it's Adam Smith had a warning about businessmen gathering in a room. Whenever businessmen gather in a room together, it's usually not to promote the public good. Okay, um, so this was from the guy who who essentially defined capitalism. Okay, so it's he described the system he saw working when he was alive. And he viewed it as being quote unquote a natural order kind of a system. I'm not saying he's right. I'm just saying that's what his viewpoint was. So, so essentially, you have all these changes coming, and we can see a little bit of a break in communications and diplomacy over the next year. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of that, and so that's something to look forward to. Saturn and Pisces belief systems have kind of ossified right now for the next 2.5 years. Okay, so that won't change. Belief systems what you view as good versus evil won't change that much, and it'll start to become more obvious as Saturn goes through Pisces. Finally, the moon is in Capricorn, a lot of focus on business next week. If we're looking in terms of earthquakes, we should see less frequent earthquake activity really until so Turkey and other countries have had a lot of earthquake activity. We should see less earthquake activity um, after the middle of this month and through around, I would say, mid-July. Okay. And even after mid-July, I'm expecting more fire or more destruction along those lines. So I don't know if that means volcanoes or just or just natural um, or assassination attempts um, or or rebellion, excuse me, because when we have Mars and K2 together, K2 tends to be kind of a revolutionary planet. K2 and Mars together will tend to stir up revolutionary energies. So it's going to be an interesting summer, but trade-wise, a little bit of improvement. The Rahu-Saturn conjunction, which the last time it ha actually happened for any extended length of time was the late 60s. Um, I think that's a hopeful sign that we're not going to go through the kind of psychosis we went through in the late 60s for very much longer. So that's hopeful to me. Okay. So let's look at your individual charts. So if I were to look at, and I look at different parts of the world, but if I were to look for things, I would expect to see trouble with armies, with oil, and also with record keeping. There's a large issue about record keeping in the United States government, which has sort of popped up recently. And I think the thing is true in other governments around the world. If I'm quite honest with you, we're not unique. We're just like the biggest, um, we're just like the most visible block. China, there's been some problems with land. They're going through a kind of a real estate crisis right now. And governments essentially have been um, not really hiding, but not reporting what the bookkeeping problems are. So again, there's no need to panic. I wouldn't do that right now. I think Jupiter's in the 12th house in this chart will be saved at the last minute by something or other. Okay, so that's sort of axiomatic for Jupiter in the 12th. So let's go on to the individual signs. Okay. Um, But again, a lot of financial crises, a lot of financial issues popping up, especially over the next year. So I just want to cap that off with just don't be surprised if you see that. Okay. All right. So let's go on to the individual signs. I know I said that a couple of times, but let's go on to the individual signs. My apologies for digressing as much as I do. Mercury's in the first house right now, so there's a lot of emphasis on communications, and there's a lot of scrambling to um, assuage hurt emotions or attack other people through communications right now. That particular combination. So we have Mars rules Mercury sign right now, so there'll be more aggressive communications coming out, definitely in terms of like court actions and also in reporting. Mars is in the sign connected with media in the United States. Um, and so it's going to be there's going to be a lot of fibbing going on. I mean, I'm trying to be polite and a little bit cute. Fibbing going on in the media over the next couple of months. Okay. Let's see now. Sun's in the second. So Aries has this penchant to lie to protect the home. Expenditures caused by wife. This is really just similar from what we saw before. And finally, we have K2 over here in the sixth house, so some potential for minor illnesses and a lot of expenditures, and also changes in administration for people who have an Aries rising sign. For this is Aries, so this is April 15th to May 15th. May 15th to June 15th is Taurus. So the sun is in the very early stages of Taurus, and so there'll be a lot of emphasis on home life for this sign as well, status for this sign. Jupiter's in the second house, some potential for money coming in because of this particular placement. So that's good. But again, it'll be in drips and drabs just for a little bit. Mars is in the third house. This particular placement gives the sun a great deal of courage, but it'll be kind of an angry courage. K2's in the fifth house, problems with children. Uh, Moon is in the ninth house, fulfillment of desires, but through aggressive effort. And the 11th house is jam-packed, so good for potential for gains, but money goes out as soon as it comes in for Taurus. For Gemini, Gemini has Mercury in the 11th house. So we have the 10th house Lord and the 11th house Lord and the 7th house Lord and the 4th house Lord uh, influencing each other in the 11th house and in the first house for Gemini. This creates what I would call a Dana Yoga. Oh, one thing I want to mention about Taurus. Taurus is largely protected because it's surrounded by benevolent planets. So Mercury and Jupiter are considered benefics, and that's called the Shubha Yoga. So Shubha Yoga is a fortunate yogas. So essentially it gets protected from really bad things happening to it. So let's get back to Gemini. Gemini has um, Jupiter in the first house, and the 11th house is ruled by Mars. So there should be some potential for financial gains. There's a lot of Dana Yoga combinations in this chart. And also, I would say, um, yeah, it's Dana Yoga, which is wealth producing combination. So good for money. Not so good for expenses, especially spending on things like luxuries and things like that, or on status for this sign. But so expenses will be sort of like at the forefront for this sign over the next few weeks, but it won't be as bad as it has been. And but especially expenses connected with the government are indicated. K2 is in the fourth house. Um, K2 does give some worries about home life, and Mars aspects the fifth, so some worries about children being disobedient. Moon is in the eighth house. Lord of the second house is in the eighth house. That gives gains through relationship partners. And Venus is in the 10th house, so this should give some good career gains to the sign, but a lot of work connected with it. And they'll be fleeting, but they'll be effective. For So this is Gemini, that's for Gemini, that's June 15th to July 15th. So Taurus overall is blessed. Gemini has better combinations going on than it has for a while. And let's see, this is Cancer. This is July 15th through August 15th. And Mars is in the first house. Again, this is a curious combination because it's what's called a Raj Yoga Karaka planet for this particular sign. So it rules the 10th house and the fifth house. So it's actually inherently lucky planet for this, for Cancer, but it's also debilitated. So the state of Cancer, Cancer's mood isn't happy, but career-wise and educationally, it's not a bad planet for this sign. K2's in the third house, gives it a great deal of courage and willingness to take chances. Moon is in the seventh house. Relationship partners will be moodier. There may be a shift in relationship status. Um, Virgo has Saturn and Rahu and Venus in it. So, um, I'm sorry, Pisces has Rahu, Venus, and Saturn in it. So this will give increased knowledge, but through, I would say, um, get quick, rich schemes. Um, but the 10th house looks good. Mercury's in the 10th house, and that's good for fulfillment of desires, especially if you're willing to travel or seek things from other countries. And Sun's in the 11th house, so good for gains. Again, that's a Dana Yoga. Jupiter in the 12th house. Um, Not so great. The ninth lord is in the 12th house, but again, that means luck if you're willing to travel or give up something in order to gain something. So Cancer's chart this week is mixed, but it's overall more favorable than unfavorable. You just have to watch out for over optimism in expenses and also a willingness to sacrifice in order to gain. Okay? For Leo, Leo has this would be August 15th to September 15th. Leo has no planets in the first house. It has no planets aspecting the first house that I can see. So let's look at where the Lord is. The Lord is in the 12th house. So this can indicate service or um, some frustration towards ambitions being fulfilled, some losses, maybe legal losses. But Jupiter's in the 11th house. You'll start to see a lot of gain for this sign over the next year or so, but not right away. K2's in the second house right now. If K2's in the second house, it does indicate unexpected increases in wealth and money because Mercury's in the ninth house. So that's good for raising the financial position of this chart. Moon is in the sixth house. Um, I'm sorry, Moon is in the sixth house. My apologies. And that gives, that's what's called a repeat Raj Yoga. So essentially what that means in plain English is um, you have the Lord of a difficult house in another difficult house. It creates essentially triumph after setbacks uh, in a chart. So right now there'll be setbacks in the chart probably until July, but then you'll see some accomplishments. Let's see now. Venus is in the eighth house along with Saturn and Rahu. So again, this is a very legitimate combination for conspiracies happening to the sign, even through partnerships, even through lies, and also through um, people wishing ill upon the person or conspiring against the individual. So you have to watch your back at least until Rahu transits to the seventh house and Venus transits to uh, the ninth house in this chart. So again, the next couple of weeks are going to be kind of treacherous, but basically, um, you'll only have Saturn in that house after that, and you'll only have one enemy to face at that particular time. Um, And this will be a traditionalist or somebody used to doing things in a very old-fashioned way. Um, so people more focus on you can't do this more so than it would be a good idea if you could do this. Let's see now. Mercury's in the ninth house as Lord of the 11th, good for financial gains again. Sun is in the 10th house, good for authority, but again, some blockage because Saturn's aspecting the 10th house. All right, so you'll have to work twice as hard to achieve the same results, but you'll get there. Um, for Virgo, Virgo runs from September 15th to October 15th. Ketu's in the first house, Rahu, Saturn, and Venus are in the seventh house. There's been some danger to relationship life for the sign. It'll probably become more obvious over the next few months because you'll see Saturn in the seventh house, but that'll be the only planet in this particular seventh house uh, within a couple of weeks. So at least you'll see a lot of the confusion and a lot of the trying to think of the term, a lot of the confusion leaving this particular house. It's also not good for relationship partners because Saturn sits in the house. And again, this is one of the combinations that does separate people relationship wise. Um, but again, there are no other afflictions to the seventh house, although Mars will be aspecting that seventh house in July, so that'll cause more frequent fights for the sign. Moon is in the fifth house, so some good luck in terms of financial gains. And Mercury's in the eighth house, so that gives, again, some unexpected breaks financially. Sun is in the ninth house Lord. So again, if the person is willing to travel or sacrifice, they can realize some financial gains. Jupiter's in the 10th house. Career-wise, you should see many more opportunities happening this month. Mars is in the 11th house. That's generally good for financial gains, although Mars is debilitated, and it can be good for real estate gains for or real estate transactions. For Libra, Libra has K2 in the 12th house. It'll soon be in the 11th house. And it has Mercury in the seventh house, so this indicates better communications with relationship partners. So this will be October 15th to November 15th, or a Libra moon or a rising sign. So again, keep in mind, I'm using the grossest generalization, and when I say grossest, the widest generalization I can use for by identifying the sun signs. If you know you have planets in your Vedic chart in Libra or in Virgo or in Leo, etc., or your rising sign is in those signs, these combinations will affect you very strongly as well. So getting back to Libra, Moon is in the fourth house. Be some change in direction. There'll be some changes in the home. So that's interesting that this should show up. Rahu, Venus, Saturn in the sixth house. Interesting in that you'll see a lot of um, arguments or disagreements over diseases, maybe some anxiety or worry over illnesses, especially connected with digestion and the kidneys. And that's increased by the sun being in the eighth house, so some elimination illnesses. That won't last long, though. That'll be um, less of a matter of concern over the next month or so. Jupiter's in the ninth house gives this sign better luck in terms of financial success, also in terms of learning success. Jupiter Libras will be very interested in learning over the next year or so. Mars is in the 10th house. There's a lot of focus on financial gain, through work, and also relationship partners will be intimately involved with work life. Uh, and finally, the sun in the sun is the 11th lord in the eighth house, so unexpected gains, unexpected windfalls through friends. And Ketu's in the 12th house, so more interest in spiritual. And again, a willingness to give up things will produce gains. This has caused a lot of illnesses to small pets over the past few months. Thank God that'll be gone. But when K2 transits into the sign, there'll be concerns over the health of older brothers or friends. Okay? Scorpio. Scorpio has no planets in the first house. The Lord of Scorpio is Mars, not Pluto, and it's located in the ninth house, which is actually a lucky placement, even though Mars is debilitated. And this is what's called a Boudica house for Scorpio ascending, which I've said before. However, the Boudica house does receive an aspect from its ruler, so that diminishes the debilitation part of Mars, and it makes this sign more confident in its judgment. Uh, Saturn sits in the fifth house. Hello, hello, I'm here. I'm okay. How are you doing? I can't hear you. How are you doing? Oh, I'm sorry. I said I'm sorry. No, I tried to eat a little bit, and it came up. Oh boy. Yeah. Okay, so as you probably heard from that recording, my wife isn't feeling well, so I had to take the call, so I apologize. Um, and so so we were talking about Scorpio fifth house has, so we were talking about the stomach, actually, that's interesting. Um, and her sun is in Scorpio, so that's really fascinating. Um, so this can indicate some stomach problems. Mercury is in the sixth house. Um, and so there's more focus on health. Sun is in the seventh house, more focus on relationship life for this sign. Jupiter's in the eighth house, which again can give unexpected windfalls to this particular sign. And K2's in the 11th house. So again, this sign really shouldn't trust its friends, shouldn't rely on its friends, can't really, at least not for another couple of weeks. Okay. Um, so let's move on to Sagittarius. That's um, so Scorpio is November 15th through December 15th. Sagittarius is December 15th through January 15th. And this indicates new partnerships for Sagittarius this year. Not right now, because there is Mars affliction in this chart. So maybe in a couple of months, maybe a new potential for relationship life or new friendships. And Moon is in the second house. This is indicates a change of fortune from unexpected sources. Mars aspects that, so maybe a real estate inheritance or something of that nature. Um, or and Rahu and Saturn are in Rahu, Venus, and Saturn are in the fourth house. So there's some disruption in home life. Mercury's in the fifth house. This combination gives some difficulty with children because children may feel tempted to lie to you just because of that particular combination. Um, Not that there's anything inherently evil about Mercury, but Mercury is ruled by Mars, and that combination does give a certain amount of deceit to it, or what I would call made-up stories. Mercury and K2, I've said this before, Mercury and K2 enjoys making up stories. Mercury and Mars can figure out sophisticated ways to tell lies that sound like they're true. Um, it's not necessarily evil, it's strategic, but they're still lies. Um, so the good part of this particular chart is we have an exalted Venus in the fourth house, and but surrounded by anxiety because of Rahu and Saturn, and Jupiter's in the seventh house. So we have Jupiter giving an aspect to the first house, and to the 11th house, which is beneficial for financial success. Moon is in Capricorn, um, in the first house, so Capricorn would be January 15th to February 15th, roughly. And the Lord of the sign is in the third house. So actually, I've seen this combination in quite a few charts, as I've said before, and actually it's a very favorable combination. Saturn, Rahu, and Venus tend to work well together. Saturn and Venus are friends. It's the first house lord in conjunction with the fifth and 10th house lords, good for career, but still some anxiety because of Rahu there. So the person will be worried about their career this particular month and also worried about their home because Mars is debilitated by transit and aspecting the first house. Mercury's in the fourth house, so there will be some change and some additional optimism about home life and education. Sun's in the fifth house, so the child will receive some notoriety or some improvement in the world. Jupiter's in the sixth, some debts connected um, with career and also some worries about competition in career life. Let's see now, K2's in, Mars is in the seventh house. We've already spoken about that. So some worry about home life, especially with wife. And K2 is in the ninth house. So unexpected shifts or changes in luck. But again, K2 will go to the eighth house after that. So we're not talking about a long-term problem. Uh, I just want people to be aware that Rahu and K2 tend to be at their worst at near the end of a sign or and in this case would mean near the beginning of a sign because they move backwards in the chart. So so essentially any anxieties or worries you have, they're going to be underscored by this particular transit. Um, so let's go over to Aquarius, which will be February 15th to March 15th. So what I'm saying right now, not a good time for new partnerships for Capricorn. Some anxieties about work, but overall not a bad week. Aquarius has this cluster of planets in the second house. It can indicate some expenses connected with home, which we've seen in a lot of cases. And that's underscored by Saturn aspecting the sun in the fourth house. Mercury's in the third house, though there's usually some way to handle this or um, make it work better for you. So this is actually good, so you can drive some good bargains with Mercury in the third house. Jupiter's in the fifth house. Overall, lucky for Aquarius, rising or Aquarius, moon or sun. But again, so the aspect will make this sign seem more optimistic or more practical. And past life efforts, in particular in connection with money, will shine through for this planet over the next few months. Mars is in the sixth house, so again, some gastrointestinal problems from this chart. Um, K2's in the eighth, some unexpected problems with health again. down in that region of the body, and especially with the elimination organs. And finally, he gets the moon in the 12th house. So that's going to mean an elimination or a gradual wasting away of health issues. For Pisces, last but not least, this is April 15th. I'm sorry, this is March 15th through April 15th. Um, you have Venus, Saturn, Rahu in the first house, Sun's in the Lord of the first house in the second, so there'll be a lot of focus on money. This sign will feel very, I would say, unrealistically optimistic, but I don't know how unrealistic it is. There'll be an increased interest in religion and spirituality and traditional life for this sign, um, and maybe some anxiety about the future, which will pass when Rahu enters the 12th house. Sun is in the third house, a lot of ambition and drive. Jupiter's in the fourth, very good for educational life, very good for home life. Mars is in the fifth, some difficulty with children, and also some difficulty with acquiring earnings from the past. So you may have to fight for your money. K2's in the seventh house. Relationship partners will seem to be a little bit down or disappointed. And finally, we go over here to the moon in the 11th house. Um, that moon in the 11th house is kind of interesting because it can mean some increases and gains. Now, keep in mind, this entire chart is working under the influence of this Kala Sarpa Yoga with all the planets between Rahu and Ketu. So we're going to have a period where things seem to be a little bit expansive when the moon is outside of this particular axis, okay? And other times when we're going to seem to be locked into position. So that's just sort of like the give or take. That'll be true until mid-July. So it'll be a little bit more difficult to get things done, and you'll receive a lot of contradictory instructions as to what people want. So just be aware of that, because what one person wants one week will not be what they want next week. Okay, so just be mindful of that. Let's go to the layout examples for the time and space chart. Then I'm going to leave and see if I can help my wife out a bit. Um, I have to shrink this down. Uh, all right, so this is where the planetary lines are this week. So the moon is a waning moon is over the Aleutian Islands in Hawaii. It's really not going to influence, or it's close to Hawaii. Mars is close to Hawaii, so there's going to be more land disputes out there, more oil disputes in Alaska, more property disputes in Alaska. Uh, Maybe some water damage. I know the volcano has been erupting in Alaska, in Hawaii for a while. Maybe some volcanic eruptions in Alaska. Who knows? There's a Rahu line running right through California, um, close to Sacramento with the capital. Not really closer, but closer to LA down here, Los Angeles, and also this is the region. I focused a lot on this in past weeks. Alberta is thinking of seceding from Canada. Um, they are worried about that happening. So there's a lot of anxiety in this part of the country, in this part of Alaska right now. If we go just a little bit to the east, that's more where Alberta is. But yeah, it looks like they're serious. Um, I think in Western United States, especially from Idaho down through Nevada, down through California, there are some increasing worries about resources and economic downturns. Venus is running through Texas and Nebraska, I'm sorry, North and South Dakota, um, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, and into into Texas. So it's and down in through Mexico. So um, that area of the country looks a little bit blessed right now. There is a Venus Moon conjunction over here in North Dakota. Could be some flooding in that part of the country. That's possible. I have heard about floods in this part of the country more so though, and over here lately. So we'll see how that develops. Um, the other thing is we have a Mars line running through here, Mars and Cancer. That makes sense. The flooding would hit those states. Uh, it's going through Kentucky next to Tennessee, down through North Carolina, South Carolina, and hitting Haiti and going down through Venezuela and all the way down into Paraguay and Uruguay. And we have a Mercury line running through um, New Hampshire, going down through um, Haiti, Dominican Republic, down into Venezuela. Venezuela's having some problems. It looks like they're having political problems down there. Peru could also be experiencing uh, maybe some potential change in government, and it's hitting down to Chile and Argentina. Moon is running through Bolivia, Colombia, and I think these countries are going to have some problems with water as well. We have the sun going right through Paraguay and Uruguay and through parts of Brazil. And Brazil, as I've said before, has some internal domestic problems, especially connected with free speech. Um, and again, it depends on which spectrum of the free speech um, debate you're on. But I I also know they're having some political disruption down there as well. And this Jupiter and Rahu line running so close to it indicates um, some anxiety about the Brazilian government. And we have a Saturn line running through the Canaries and Azores. So there can be some economic problems in those areas. Finally, we have a Venus line running up through Ireland into Scotland and into Portugal. And that can indicate some governmental changes in those countries. Um, the reason I'm saying that with Venus is mainly because Venus uh, has to do to a certain extent with social reform or social politics. So that's why I'm focusing on that. Let's see now. We have a moon line running up through Sweden and Norway, down through uh, Germany, next to Germany and Austria, and down into Italy, down into Libya, down into Chad, and heading down to South Africa. I'm sure you've heard about um, the sanctuary that's been proposed for South African whites. So we have a Mars line running through South Africa. So a lot of people are angry about that. Um, and like I said, I report the news. I don't make it. Okay. So Mars is running through Greece as well. Greece is a little bit angry as well, emotional as well. Turkey has a Mercury line running through it. That's actually not bad. There can be some rejuvenation of the economy in Turkey, maybe a little bit of a break from the earthquakes. The Mars line being close to Turkey, though, I'm not so sure that could be wishful thinking on my part. So Turkey's still vulnerable to earthquakes over the next couple of months, I think. And Mercury's also running up through Egypt. It's Isra Israel and Palestine are sort of between Sun and Mercury right here. Saudi Arabia is as well. So how I would read that is that those governments are asserting their authority. They're not budging in terms of what they want to do and what they're communicating to the world. Same is true of Russia. Same is true of Ukraine. Um, Although there have been some attempts to start peace negotiations in uh, especially in Ukraine, especially, and again, there has been a normalization of relations with Syria, which is interesting. So we'll see how that works out. Rahu is passing over Iran, so Iran's in kind of a panic mode, and you see a Rahu Saturn line um, and a Jupiter line. Uh, in so Pakistan is I'm not pitting either country as the aggressor, but essentially Pakistan is acting stupider than India is right now, you know. And I'm saying that with all due respect, you know, it has nothing against Pakistan in particular, but Saturn lines do make us stupid. And certain Saturn locations in the chart can make us very destructive. Um, so that's still a danger point, but less of a danger point than last week, I think. And we have a Venus line running through here, running into China, Venus and Jupiter lines running into through Western China. So that's just like the tip of it. And we also see a Mercury line. So commerce should start improving in China and Vietnam and Taiwan over the next few weeks. But and that'll have a ripple effect in Thailand and Cambodia. But let me just see now. Also, Indonesia. Borneo has a Mars line running through it, so does Indonesia. So there can be some civil disturbances in Indonesia and also some interest in changing governments in South Korea. Japan is largely left untouched by any of these lines, although there is a Rahu line to the east and a Saturn line to the east, but that seems to be affecting more uh, New Guinea and also Eastern Australia. So, and Venus is running through New Zealand. So again, more interest in there have been certain government scandals unearthed in uh, New Zealand, and I think you'll start to see those exposed a little bit more. Also, the Venus running through Ireland and Scotland. I think that'll expose government scandals, and also Portugal. I think that'll expose government scandals in those countries as well. So wherever you see a Venus line in this map, uh, there's some indication of governmental scandals. India, um, the west coast of Africa, and let me just also central United States and Mexico. Okay. So that's about it for me for this week. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to subscribe, comment, like. If you like me to see me doing anything different, please do let me know. I did have something planned where I want to discuss the P. Diddy trial. this week, but um, I got distracted, to be honest with you. So I will cover that at some point. And that's about it. But I think a lot of what's happening politically is more fascinating to me than Hollywood scandals, if I'm honest with you. And because I like to see the play and how it's going to play out and whether or not we are going to see meaningful change in the United States um, over the next few years. Hopefully we will, and hopefully it will be for the benefit of everybody. Okay, so that's a hope I continuously have. I'm not a dewy-eyed optimist, but I can see at least a real potential for change and maybe a little bit of a breakaway, especially in certain European countries, from decisions being made by people who have no vested interest in those countries. So that's sort of like the bias I'm operating from. Okay, all right. So that's it for me. I wish you all the best luck. Remember, um, you can still accept your life and still work to improve it. And that's all for me. I love you all. God bless you. Have a wonderful week. Thank you very much for watching. And again, I love you all. Namaste. Thanks for staying with me so long.